Hello and welcome back to Beckler Guitars and Repair, and today we're checking out a 7-pound Gibson from the 90s. This is a 1997 Gibson Les Paul II in ebony. Let's check it out. Alright, I've actually been looking for one of these for a while, and I picked it up locally, and this guitar's got a lot going for it. So yeah, basically, I love Les Pauls, but I always find them a little bit heavy. So this one, I weighed it right after I bought it, and it's just over 7 pounds, just a hair over 7 pounds. So that's great. It's also a 1997, so it's considered to be in that good wood era of Gibson. Take that for what you will, but in my experience, a lot of the guitars I've tried in that era are really great. So that might be anecdotal, but there might be something to it as well. Also, this guitar's got a nice big chunky neck. So we've got a nice light Les Paul made in a good era with a big thick neck. So that checks a lot of boxes for me. So I'm pretty excited to check this out. So yeah, this is a 1997 Gibson Les Paul II. So if you're not familiar with this model, there was actually a model before this called the Paul, and a model after the Paul that kind of took over after the Paul called the Firebrand Les Paul. So the Paul, the original one, was developed by Whitney Morrison, the Gibson plant manager in Nashville. So the Les Paul was made to be like a stripped down version of the Les Paul that was just kind of bare bones and less expensive. The original the Pauls actually had a walnut body and a walnut neck, so that kind of makes them pretty unique. And then the Paul was replaced in 1980 by the Firebrand. The Paul Deluxe is another thing it was kind of called. So that one had a 3-piece mahogany neck and a mahogany body. And then in 1996, this one came into play, the Paul II. The model was resurrected with a mahogany body, and this one has a carved top. The other two, the Les Paul and the Firebrand, didn't have the carved top. They just had a flat, kind of a slab body. This one also, the body is a lot thinner, which is why it's so light. So this one actually has a thinner body. It's 2/3 as thick as a normal Les Paul. It also has a rear belly cut in the back, which is something that Gibson does not put on many guitars. So it's got that comfort carve there and a thinner body, and it's nice and light. As far as specs goes, you've got 2 volumes, 2 tones. We've got these original knobs on there. Everything on this guitar is original. It's in pretty good shape. We've got a Nashville style bridge, our tailpiece, and our standard 3-way pickup selector. This one has ceramic pickups on here, so this is the 490R 498T pickup set that came in a lot of 90s Gibsons, SGs a lot of the time. And Gibson was putting these into custom shops for a while too. I think they still do a couple models with these in there. And then we've got a nice rosewood fingerboard. It's got acrylic dot inlays. There's no binding on this model. And a Corian nut. We can see our truss rod cover says The Paul II, and our silk screened Gibson logo. And mahogany body. I can't remember if this has actually got a maple top on it or not, or if it's just carved mahogany. We'll have a look when we look in the pickup cavity. And the finish is kind of thin enough that you can actually see down to the grain in the light a little bit. So I might be able to tell whether this is a 2-piece body or a 1-piece body. I'll have to look a little closer. And again, it's in pretty decent shape. I think the worst wear is coming up on the neck here. So we've got a pretty big ding there on the neck. You can feel it, although it's not quite through the finish. It might be a little bit. You can see some of the wood poking through at the very bottom. So yeah, this one's a pretty big impression on the neck there. And then it looks like something happened to our headstock. So you can see in the light there's that crack there, like a V there. So I'm thinking what probably happened is it's a headstock repair. If you look at the front of the guitar, there's no cracks in the front. So this was likely a cracked neck that someone, you know, injected glue into and then closed it up and repaired. It's hard to tell how big the crack actually was. You can see the crack kind of continues onto the side here, both sides. It probably was substantial. I did give it, I like when I buy guitars like this with a crack in that area, I like to give them a stress test. So what I do is I'll take the neck and I'll reef on it a little bit just to see if that crack flexes at all. Typically I'll do that before I buy it, as long as the buyer's okay with it. I'm just going to test this crack out a little bit to see if anything moves. I'm not going to break it or anything. I just want to give it a little bit of pressure. And typically they're okay with that. Sometimes if they say no, well, then don't do it. And just, you can make the call whether you want to buy it or not and then try it yourself when you get home. But this one seems to be very well repaired. There's no movement at all when I flex this. And yeah, I'm not sure the extent of the repair, but it looks to be well done. And then there's our serial number, which dates it to a 1997, made on the 293rd day of the year. And the batch number was 319. Also comes with the Gibson Deluxe Vintage Style Tuners. And yeah, this guitar is in great shape except for, you know, some surface scuffs. A black guitar kind of shows everything. I'm pretty sure a lot of this will clean up once we give it a nice polish. The frets seem to be in good condition. There's a little bit of some divots here, so someone did play this thing a little bit. All the parts are original. Alright, let's put it on the scale and confirm the weight. So yeah, just a hair over 7 pounds, which is crazy light for a Les Paul. Just for reference, most Les Pauls are in the higher 8 pounds, like almost 9 pounds, and can go all the way up to like 11.5 pounds, just depending on the year and if it's weight relieved or not. A lot of different factors. This guitar hasn't been weight relieved. So some people say that the weight relief stuff kind of affects resonance and sustain and that kind of stuff. So this guitar is actually non-weight relief, but it's a thinner body. So yeah, pretty cool. So that's 7 pounds, 5.4 ounces, or 3.33 kilograms. Because this guitar was made before Gibson had a website, and it's kind of a rarer guitar, it was hard to find specs on it. So one site did tell me that it did have the 490, 498 set, and this reading does confirm that. So it's reading a 13.52 in the bridge position, which is a pretty consistent reading with a 498. And then in the neck position, it's reading a 7.67. So yeah, this is definitely the 490, 498 set. And in the middle, it's reading a 4.99. Let's have a look at the pickups. So in our bridge position, yeah, you can definitely tell those are this is a 498. You can see the T here and the Gibson USA engraving on the back. And this one has the braided wires. And the neck pickup, yeah, more of the same. It's got the T with the engraved Gibson USA logo. And looking in our cavity here, it's painted, but you can definitely see there's no maple top on this. It's basically one piece of mahogany, and they carved the top. And there's a look at our pickup cavity. Looks like there's no writing on the cavity. It's just been painted. And you can see our routes look nice and clean. And this one has a short neck tenon, so you don't see the tenon in the neck pickup cavity. But yeah, everything looks as it should. Here's a look at our Nashville style bridge. It hasn't collapsed at all, it's in good shape. And our full weight tailpiece with the casting mark there. Everything's looking good. And here's a look inside of our control cavity. So it looks like all the parts in here are original. It's got that 90's mounting plate that they used to use back then. And you can see all the Gibson pots are branded, so likely all the pots are original, and the brown ceramic disc capacitors, again, were they used in this era. But some of the soldering looks like it's been touched up. So especially this solder point here, there's nothing attached to it, and someone kind of reattached it to the side. So either that was a factory kind of a boo-boo where they had to resolder a point, or it's this pickups may have been replaced at some point with something else and then put back to original. It's unclear, but the soldering looks a little strange on this one, although the parts all look proper. And then in our switch pickup cavity, you can see some of that red buffing compound, which you can see in the cavities on some of these guitars in the 90s. And this is looks like original three-way switch. Alright, let's take a look at the condition quickly. So yeah, our headstock's in decent shape. Just some like surface level scuffs and polish swirls. There's our the Paul 2 cover. And there's a look at our truss rod. It's in good shape, lots of room for adjustability. And our nut appears to be well cut. I did polish the frets and hydrated the fingerboard, so that's all looking good now. The frets had some wear, but it seems to have polished out most of the marks, so they're nice and super shiny. This rosewood actually has some really nice waviness to it. You can see it right there. It's actually a really cool looking fingerboard. And moving on to the body. So yeah, just a lot of polishing swirls and like surface level scuffs, but nothing major. It's in pretty nice shape for being a 27-year-old guitar. One thing I did notice is there is a little bit of a ding right here. You can see. But that's about it for the top. And yeah, the sides are all looking good. Someone took pretty good care of this guitar, aside from the headstock break, I guess. And yeah, on the back, there's no buckle worming, which is good. Just some light scuffs. Seems to be some sort of a scuff there, that V scuff there. It's not through the finish. You could probably buff that out, but it's not that bad. And there's a look at our belly cut. And moving on to the neck. Just that one larger ding right there, you can see. And our headstock. So yeah, it's pretty well done repair wise. What's interesting though is like there's no squeeze out at all. So, and there's no sanding. Like typically when a crack like this is done, it doesn't close perfectly because, you know, grains of wood get in the way when you're closing it up, or the glue doesn't quite fit properly, or it doesn't close it properly rather. And but this one it's super smooth, and there's just the faintest hint of a crack. So yeah, someone either really repaired this very well, or this was simply a gloss crack, but I do think it was repaired. I'm actually going to throw this under black light right now just to look at that. Alright, for those of you that don't know, you can use a black light on you know, your vintage guitar just to see if there was any repairs or overspray, it'll glow different than the like original aged finish. So let's have a look here. So the back all looks good. You can even see like stand rash. So if this was like sitting on a stand, you'd see a spot in the bottom here where it was discolored. That might have reacted with the finish a little bit. But let's have a look at that headstock. So we'll be able to see an overspray too, because that overspray will be a different color. Yeah, and there we are. So again, it might have been sanded a little bit. You can kind of see some sanding might have been done there. There's definitely the crack, and it kind of comes all the way to the side. Again, if I glow the headstock on the front, you can't see anything. Oh yeah, and it goes all the way up that side as well. So yeah, I'm definitely thinking this was a very well done repair. But it wasn't oversprayed at all, and it was just like very lightly sanded, so that crack really did close up great. Let's go ahead and flip it around and look at the front just for fun. So yeah, everything's glowing as it should be. You can see those lines there. That's actually because the tailpiece and the bridge preserved the finish from like UV. So because that was always had a shadow over it blocking the sunlight, it glows a little bit different in those two spots. That's kind of interesting. And yeah, everything else looks good. And you can see in the headstock there's no cracks at all. So this, whatever happened to this, it wasn't cracked the full way through. Alright, let's go ahead and restring this guitar and get it all set up. Alright, managed to get quite a nice setup on this guitar. So using our notched straight edge, you can see that there's a very small gap between the straight edge and the fingerboard, so that tells us that the truss rod is set nice and light and there's not much relief in the neck, which is how I like to set it. And then here at the 3rd fret, when I use the 3rd fret, you can see that the string is almost resting just on that 1st fret, so that tells us the neck is straight and the truss rod is set tight, and we have a well cut nut. So we've got nice action there in the cowboy chord area. And then at the 12th fret, using our depth gauge here, we've got about a 1 millimeter at the low E and down to almost a 0.5 to a 0.75 at the high E. So this one has exceptionally low action. And I just want to go through our frets up and down the fingerboard to make sure there's no buzzing or fretting out anywhere. I like to speed up this part, but if you want to hear it in real time, just slow down your player to 25%. So yeah, even with that low of action, there's no buzzing or fretting out anywhere. Just very, very nice playing guitar. And there's no binding on this neck, but there's still no fret sprout at all. It's nice and smooth. Yeah, it feels great. Width at the nut is a 1.69 or 43.1 millimeters, and at the 12th fret that's a 2.05 inches or 52.1 millimeters. Neck depth at the 1st fret is a 0.83 inches or 21.2 millimeters, and at the 12th fret it's a 0.99 inches or a 25.32 millimeters. And here's a look at our neck profile. It's a pretty standard C shape, and it stays pretty C shaped all the way up to the 12th fret. And the neck does not feel too chunky. It's definitely a little bit chunkier feeling than like your standard 60s, like a slim taper. That C stays pretty round all the way up to the 12th. It doesn't really flatten out much, so it feels a little beefier up here and a little thinner up here. But it's a good feeling neck. I usually like bigger necks, but this one feels not too small, not too big, kind of right in the middle. Alright, so I'm plugged into my 1965 Fender Bassman. These are my settings. And I'm using a Jim Jones GTO germanium overdrive pedal. It's just a really nice transparent overdrive. And I'm miking up a 212 cab with an SM57. And I'm using an Audio-Technica condenser mic for the room. So I'm just going to go through the clean in each pickup position. And then try it with a little bit of overdrive. So yeah, sounds nice clean. One thing about these pickup set is because there's such a big difference in the output of these pickups, like this is pretty much double the output of this pickup. It's kind of hard to play it clean because this one really wants to drive the amp, and this one is just a lot softer. So yeah, you can play it clean, but you might have to adjust your amp settings a little bit to get it kind of perfect. I'm just running it straight so you can hear exactly how it sounds. But yeah, the back pickup has a tendency to want to push the amp even at very, very low gain and low volumes. Let's start with a little bit of distortion. Alright, final thoughts on the 1997 Gibson Les Paul II. It's a really, really cool guitar. I'm really glad I found one. I've wanted to try one for a really long time, and you know, it lived up to the hype. It's a great little guitar. If you're looking for a Les Paul but can't get along with the weight, and if you want something with a chunkier neck too, this is a really, really great option. And yeah, it's not weight relieved at all. It's just a thinner body, and that comfort carve is actually pretty nice too. You don't see that very often on Gibsons. And it plays and sounds great. It's super resonant. It vibrates a lot when you're playing it. That's kind of a key factor in a really good guitar, I find. So this one has the juice. Plays super low with really nice action. And I buffed up the frets, so it's actually really super easy to bend and play. I typically don't like this pickup set. However, this specific set sounds really good. It still has the inherent problem with this set of the back pickup being like twice as hot as the front pickup. But you can actually lean into that a little bit with your playing style and use it as more of an advantage. If you're playing heavier stuff, switch to the back pickup, and lighter stuff, switch to the front. You could also change your pickup heights to get them a little bit closer to balanced. If you lowered this one a lot and raised the neck pickup up a little bit, they'd be a lot more balanced. But yeah, this guitar was just super comfortable to play. The neck felt great, stayed in tune really well. Again, this specific pickup set in this guitar sounded really good. I've had problems with these before with it being too muddy and not very articulate, and that was not the case with these ones. And yeah, no neck dive on this model either. It's a great little guitar. I actually just bought another Les Paul that's I like just a little bit more than this one. Otherwise, I'd be keeping this one because it's a great. This is definitely a keeper guitar. If you're interested in this guitar, I'll have it up for sale on the Reverb page, and I'll put the link in the description. But that's gonna be it for today. Thank you for tuning into Beckler Guitars and Repair, and I'll have more for you really soon. Thanks a lot.